like debating organizations, of course they will do a debating tournament, and the debating tournament will teach some kids some skills a little bit, but like by itself, like it doesn't really have effects on the status quo, because the people who participate in it, if they decide to use those skills, like really develop them and use them to make a career out of it, will turn out to be something like lobbyists or politicians, or at the best lawyers who can like
Right.
at least be neutral, like in terms of like their constructiveness for the society.
Uh,
So like most of the people who take it seriously do go to a law school and end up doing something that follows a law school,
yeah.
or like in my case something like political science, or something in that regard, which doesn't actually end up like those people don't typically end up helping anything in the end, because either they are just co-opted by the system and just help
Yeah.
perpetuate the system, or just get frustrated and don't really do anything with it.
Yeah, I hear you. What about all the let's social influencers, we'll call them, that kind of take that side? Do you think that's a good thing, or are you kind of against that side of things?
Well, the way it's being done is kind of terrible. Meaning that it's mostly, again, people trying to make a living and by like promoting just brands and just doing nonsense.
Right.
Because that's the thing, like the concept of like being influencer is not necessarily negative. Just like concept of marketing isn't necessarily negative. It depends on like who's doing what with it,
Right.
and what's like the systemic general outcome. Like because like today marketing is generally done very in a predatory fashion, and it's like really terribly, to the extent that the people who like achieved high levels in those fields of like writing ads or something on the internet do like eventually realize that they've been the bad guy, and then just like some of them have epiphanies and just like leave it when they're on the top. They leave because they like learn that what they've been doing is kind of ruining things.
Yeah.
So because that's like really difficult. Like you want to have a career in marketing, like how to do it like to be an ethical marketer today with the systems out there set up and how the funding works. Very difficult. I worked for a year or so for a marketing agency, because that's the kind of job that I can get with my education and background.
Yeah.
And I realized, because I at least like try, I don't just want to assume. I want to know if something's bad. I just want to know. So I will like, give it a try, and to learn how the people think in the field and what they're actually doing. And
Yeah.
what essentially it amounts to is that you're doing the science, like research of how to just attract eyeballs to
Right.
things, and you're trying to hack people's brains. Like
Yeah.
you're not trying to persuade them or convince them or do some sort of better argument. You just know that you have to like use as a thumbnail a face doing and no, because the science says that if people see
They,
face, then we'll click, and you can measure that and like see, I've measured that people click on that more, so
yeah.
therefore it is better. And that's essentially how the whole thing works. Like do
Yeah.
whatever to achieve a measurable outcome, and usually the whatever is a pretty bad thing that you're doing that's
Yeah.
manipulative and ruining people's
Okay.
ability to think.
I agree 100%. So the solution to that then is really what I want to try to focus on with this is to I guess get marketers and or influencers and or politicians as well, obviously,
Or
to
lawyers, or like any of these
lawyers,
professions
all of these, yeah,
can
all
do
of the
good
above.
in this way.
Yeah. Everything we just talked about. I want to get all of them to better understand the purpose of what they're doing and how it's going to help themselves as well as society progress. And how they can find better ways, better answers to these types of brainwashing marketing or ethical marketing, and focus on the win-win situations where they're actually offering a service that's going to help people's lives. They're offering something that's going to make people better people,
Yeah,
and
because
have more opportunity,
there
more
are
health.
there are I imagine there are many people who are doing these professions who would want to do good, but can't, realize they can't within the current
Right,
system, the way it's set up. Because if they try to do good, the system would just throw them out, and they
right,
won't
right.
get any funding,
That's correct.
couldn't have
Yeah,
make a living, couldn't have a career. And like
right.
example would be in law, there are many people who would be, despite many obstacles, would still choose to be public defenders,
Right.
because even though it's not going to make them rich, it's going to be a terrible job. Won't have, because many, like in the United States, for example, the many of the laws are set up so that this job is almost impossible to do. And there will be
Yeah.
people like, it was like one lawyer, I think it was on John Oliver or somewhere, was like featuring one of these lawyers who like every case he loses, he tattoos the name of the person that he couldn't help on his body. Like that level of motivation, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
arguably a bit on the crazy side. But again, it's like a person who is very
Yeah.
motivated, could do a
Who
lot of good.
cares? Yeah.
It's just many of the people who are in these professions probably, even if like maybe some of them were even idealistic from the start and they just got disillusioned,
Yeah.
but many of them wouldn't mind Like I feel like see that a lot in the corporate sphere. Is that many of the people in the corporate sphere are essentially neutral people. Like if you put
Right.
them in a system that does good, they would be fine doing that. Like an example, if you have a fairly ethical, weirdly ethical corporation like Red Hat, and
Yeah.
then other corporations in the same field that you couldn't say that about, like Microsoft, and you have
Yeah.
people moving between these companies, and they are like effective CEO or effective doing whatever function person in any of these companies. Like there's like switch from Facebook to IBM to Red Hat and stuff. And to them, it's just all just a job, and they're always doing it effectively. But what the company is trying to do is therefore like channeling their work toward a fundamentally different outcome.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's all about if you can be paid the same amount of money to do something, good and ethical versus something notorious. I think the vast majority of people
Yeah,
would choose to
majority
think, right?
would
That's
do
kind
that.
of the goal with all this is just to create more opportunities for good debaters and good critical thinkers to find careers and or purpose.
Like at first an outlet, and eventually potentially a career. That would
Exactly.
definitely like hook people.
Yeah, that's really the main focus of what I'd love to create, something like that.
No, so
It's
just
just
like if I just try to sum it up in my head, so what you would be trying to build is a thing that doesn't exist, and that's debating competitive. No, I wouldn't even use the word competition. It's just like a
yeah,
debate education program, which is, however, not neutral, which is actually aimed to solve a problem. So
exactly.
you're channeling the creativity and ingenuity of the people in the system to produce solutions that they believe in, as opposed to just try to figure whatever problem was randomly assigned to them that day in that debate and then forget about it.
Yep, that's exactly right.
I
Trying to
think
write that
that's
down.
yeah, that's a
Yeah, that's
that's a good
exactly
idea.
right.
I think that's fundamentally a good idea that nobody has really tried that could work, because I know the potential. I know I've seen so many people like learn to speak and critically think in these programs, and I've seen like the kinds of things that they are able to come up with when they're motivated. It's just in those debating programs, it doesn't amount to any outcome.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I think we're 100% agreed on what the goal is, and I think if nothing else today we've been able to kind of be clear about that. I think so. That's great. That's a great first step.